My name is Vincent Maier. I own Vicious Fitness. I started it during COVID because I always helped people for the last decade lose weight and get in shape and transformations and contest prep. I always did that for about a decade. Actually, I spent my 21st birthday getting somebody ready for their first show and they took second place. Um, and it was funny that once COVID happened, I was like, well, there's no excuses to not start a business now because I have all the free time in the world. And anybody who knows me knows I love to work and I love to stay busy. So I started that. and and it was really, really awesome. And prior to that, I was a bartender. I was a waiter, and I was more or less like kind of like trying to make money. And I never had like the financial means to just be like, all right, I'm gonna take off and just start this business. It was like, no, 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 like you gotta hustle, man. So I started my business during COVID, and then I soon met my fiance, and she was like, "So you have this online business and you're training people. So how do you plan on making money?" And I was like, "Okay, all right, cool." And it kind of lit a fire under my ass. And then before I knew it, a year later, I had a full roster of in-person training, and I was doing people online and in person, and the whole thing. And I got a little overwhelmed, and I walked away from the in-persons a little more, and kind of just focused on developing the online and helping people more in an intricate level as far as the online was, which was more of a lifestyle rather than just like eat this, do this, live this way. It was more or less like all encompassing on like bettering on how they live their life. And that's really like my passion overall, is kind of improving their quality of life, not only by losing weight, but also by what their perception of progress might be.
Yeah. So how did you actually end up getting into the world of fitness?
I got into the world of fitness. It's funny, like you said the whole thing about losing a family member, because I was very, very close to my grandmother, my grandmother Sherry, and I would go to her house and I would only play PlayStation, eat Airheads, and drink Sprite for all the live long day. My dad was a chef. Oh, he's a chef, and we would eat tons of food. And so I was a heavy kid, heavy, out of shape, didn't do very much activity in any way, shape, or form. And once my grandmother passed away and I got into high school, I realized very, very shortly that I was physically like not up to par. And it was one of those things where I was very, very self-conscious about it. And so what happened was I tried out for the football team because I was a bigger kid, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll try out for the football team. I'll be one of the cool kids." And the very last day of the preseason, they cut me. They're like, "Listen, man, you're just not physically ready." And I remember being like so upset that I was like, "Well, if I can't be on the team, then I'm gonna get strong anyway." And I started going to this gym across the street from my high school, which was called Crush Fitness, which I absolutely love. It's closed now. It was this old school hardcore gym that all these competitors went to and everything else. And it was like, I look back on some of the machines there and I'm like, whoa, I was super lucky. And there were like some like old IFBB pros there and like a bunch of people and everything else like that. And I kind of got like they kind of welcomed me in with open arms and taught me a lot of things about like nutrition and training and stuff like that. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the camaraderie. I fell in love with like the process. I fell in love with the fact that I could express myself in that way, shape, and form. And it was an incredibly healthy outlet. And I fell in love with that. And then it kind of went one step further, and I went to college for kinesiology and nutrition in SUNY Fredonia, and it just kind of grew from there. And I really caught the iron bug like as soon as I started training, which was great.
Let me tell you about today's sponsor, Let's Get Checked. They're a worldwide leader in at-home testing kits, so you can get a complete look at your levels without leaving your home. Testing with Let's Get Checked is all about taking your health into your hands. Let's Get Checked makes it easy to test and accessible to get and understand your results. In a world of fast-paced lifestyles, making an appointment and going to an office sometimes just doesn't fit into a schedule. It can also be pretty expensive to get tests done, but Let's Get Checked makes it so much easier. They'll send you a testing kit to make it much more time efficient and get your results back quickly. Once your sample arrives in the laboratory, confidential results will be available from your secure online account within 2 to 5 days. If you're ready to take your health and fitness into your own hands, check out Let's Get Checked at trylgc.com/theweightroom and save 25%. You can also find the link below down in the show notes. And did you catch the bodybuilding bug, I guess, from being around all those bodybuilders?
So I caught the bodybuilding bug. I remember the moment. I was walking into the locker room and I saw this athlete, Gerard Martin, and he was a natural pro who was sponsored by Muscle Tech. And I remember watching him pose and thinking, he looks like he's made of plastic, and being like in jaw dropped at how he looked. And it was that moment that I was like, well, I would love to do that one day. And I was working at a Red Robin. And I remember my manager was like, I got to go to this show and watch this guy compete because he looks incredible. And I guess he misinterpreted and he thought that I thought I was saying that I was going to go to the show, like compete. He's like, listen, man, you're a Husky kid. You're always going to be a Husky kid. It's just kind of the way it is. I remember like vividly him saying that. And like this like East Coast spite in my heart came out. And I was like, not today, sir. And I remember I had the animal packet with Frank McGrath in it, and he had his contest diet, and it was just like beef and sweet potato. So all I did, I swapped the beef for chicken because it was cheaper and I was broke. I just did chicken and sweet potato every day for 12 weeks in very, very small portions, to the point that I got into like somewhat lean, but not necessarily contest shape. But I stepped on stage anyway at 19. I think it was 19, 16, like 18, 19. And I did decent, and I kind of fell in love with that. And then I did my first real contest prep a year later, and I got incredibly shredded, and I killed myself to do it. And the rest is history. I really, really fell in love with the regimen and the really like having the organization, like having complete control over your schedule and your day and the organization of like that you needed to have a successful outcome.
And did you feel like you always kind of had that in some way, in some, whether it be school or any aspect of your life, or do you feel like bodybuilding kind of developed that and then you kind of learned to love it?
I feel like I love to plan, right? So I love to be organized. I love to plan. And I think it just kind of fell into place as an outlet for that, And I think prior to that, I just didn't have, like, I would just kind of plan my day as I went, or I planned like other things as I went. But it wasn't as like strict or as organized as like having like a set protocol to follow as far as like nutrition and training and all the other stuff, like a better outlet for it. So I think I already had those things, but bodybuilding just really like accentuated that.
Gotcha. And for you, what was kind of the most difficult part? What was the most challenging part of bodybuilding when you first started? All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here just for a second. Let me tell you about Smoking Gun Coffee. They're a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to produce a quality coffee at an affordable price. They only buy coffee from small coffee farmers around the world with a cup score of at least 85. Each batch is roasted to order for maximum freshness. They also donate a large portion of their proceeds to organizations that help local communities, veterans, first responders, or you can donate to the foundation of your choice at the checkout by going to www.smokingguncoffee.com. That's SMOKIN Gun Coffee. When it comes to science-backed supplements that taste great, 2NS is your one-stop shop. They truly maximize quality by making their own supplements in-house. With over a combined 90 years of experience, 2NS's team of industry experts has a commitment to research, quality, development, and innovation. The body is sacred, so give it the best. Check out all 2NS has to offer at secondnaturesupplements.com. That's 2ndnaturesupplements.com.
I'm going to think about that for half a second. I think it's really staying in your lane, right? Like the hardest part about it is like if something's working for you, not looking at what's looking working for Johnny or what's working for, the other guy over there. It's really kind of like taking into consideration like what your progress looks like, what is it that works for me, and staying healthy, not getting emotional about decisions, staying objective, and staying in your lane. I think for a long time, I made a lot of decisions emotionally and not necessarily based upon what is actually happening. I think, and as I get older, it's really kind of putting things in perspective and understanding that some days are going to be hard, but inevitably, like looking at the big picture rather than the small picture and not making any rash decisions emotionally is really what the most valuable lesson I've learned.
It seems like a lot of motivation, and a lot of times we get motivated by different things. You seem to be motivated by in that circumstance you're motivated by the feeling of, someone's not going to tell me that I can't do something. Is that a common theme within your bodybuilding journey?
It was. It was so funny because it was until it wasn't. So it was funny. It was such a thing where like I was like, oh, they don't think I can. They don't think I can. They don't think I can. Until I was about 23. And then I had already like been training like crazy, been doing all this crazy stuff, done all this crazy diets, like prepped a couple times. And then it was weird because it had to shift my thought process because everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you can. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like there's no doubt." And I was like, "What do you mean? You're not going to tell me I can't? You're not going to like whatever?" And they're like, "No, no, no, you can. Like totally blah blah blah." Or it was like when I started a new life in Texas, I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to move to Texas and da da and just start a new life. I don't have no friends or family there." And I remember my dad being like, "Oh yeah, you can. You'll be fine. You're always fine." And I remember being like, "Well, where's this motivation going to come from now? Because I'm not getting any pushback from anybody." And so I kind of really had to start doing things just because I loved them, not because somebody said I couldn't, or not because I was proving somebody wrong, but purely because I, Vincent, enjoy it, and or I do certain things as far as like training or nutrition or whatever is because it works for me, not because somebody doesn't think I can. And that was like a shift that happened in like my early 20s that I had to learn to do. And it was definitely different because it was like one of those things where I was so used to doing things out of spite that to do things out of love for myself or love for the process was a different mindset overall. And it was definitely one of those things like I remember even here in Texas when I first got here, I was like training like crazy. And I did like this, like, I remember I did this like squat. I did this 255-pound squat for 50 reps in one set. And I remember after that, like, it was just like anything I wanted to do, they're like, oh, yeah, he's the Terminator. He'll do it, totally do it. He's fine. He's like a robot. And I remember being like, no one's gonna tell me I can't. I don't understand. And I struggled more with that. I struggled more with making things easier for myself because it was just efficient rather than just making an emotional decision and make things harder for no reason. And I think a lot of people do that, especially in bodybuilding. They make things hard for no reason, not because they're more efficient, but because it's just harder. And inevitably, like, it's not about making it as hard as humanly possible. It's about getting to the finish line while still maintaining your relationship, still maintaining your sense of sanity and enjoying the process, you know?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I was talking to somebody on here and they were like, it's not a competition about who can suffer the most. It's a competition really about, what you look like and what you can bring to the stage. And the best way to do that is by doing really as little as physically possible to get there, not, make it, like you said, making it hard on yourself.
Absolutely. And it took me forever to learn that because I always and it was funny, I had somebody who was very close to my life say this years ago, and they were like, it always seems like you feel like you have to be punished for something. Like you're always doing these workouts, like you have to be punished for something, or you these diets or whatever it was. And then as soon as I backed off, as soon as I let go of the throttle and made things easier, especially this year. This year was like an eye opener. It was so much easier and more graceful, and I looked better, and everything was like started to flow rather than like be this like path of resistance, that it was just a lot more enjoyable. And I fell in love with it all over again as a result.
And when you moved to Texas, did did you change, whether it be because of the, people around you, or the atmosphere, whatever it may be? Like, did your training, did your just bodybuilding in general change at all? Of course, it would change, based on more experience and things like that, but just kind of being in a new location with new people.
So drastically. Um, so the story of coming to Texas was I I was strongman and powerlifting prior to coming to Texas. And I was dating a, like a very renowned chef in the New York area while I was living there. And then we were dating around like 2016, 17 until she died. And then that's pretty much what happened. Was she committed suicide in 2018, and my life turned upside down. My perspective on everything turned upside down. I was devastated inside now. I lost everything. My home. I had a lot of friends and family turn their back on me. I had a lot of like I was grieving. A lot of things happened. I was in agony. And so I decided to move to Texas because everything was a memory in New York. And it was in upstate New York, not New York City. So I moved to New York, from New York to Texas, and I was still very angry. I was still grieving. So still like kind of power training and lifting really heavy and doing all the powerlifting stuff. And I remember meeting a couple of bodybuilders here in Texas, guys I had known from YouTube and watching videos and all this other stuff. They're like, dude, you should bodybuild. You have the genetics. You look great. Da, da, da. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. Like, like do something different or whatever it was, because I'm sick of getting injured and all that other stuff. But I still kept like getting like I still was training out of rage until about a year later, year and a half later. And then I wasn't angry anymore. And I kind of sat with myself. It was through my first prep, I was angry. And then the second one, I just got tired. I was exhausted. And then COVID happened conveniently. And I had to sit with myself. I had to sit with everything that happened. And that's when my training and my mindset and everything really changed. But because I was tired of being angry and grieving and, you know, woe is me and this whole process. And it came with a lot of therapy and it came with a lot of self-work. But that's when things started to change for me, kind of thinking about like, what is it that I'm doing? Why is it that I'm doing it this way? And is there a better way of doing this so that way I'm having fun with this instead of this turning into some kind of like self harm or self abuse to kind of punish myself for what I had no control over? In order to get to a certain level in order to get into a certain shape, you have to have a certain mindset. And that's why only like a small percentage of like the population can do that, or to train a certain way or to do a certain thing. And that's what I think kind of adds camaraderie to the physique sport. It's not the fact that we're all just trying to look good, it's the fact of the mindset you have to push your body to that level at any level of bodybuilding is really like a blessing. And it really like kind of brings the community together because we all share something together.
Ready to take your supplements to the next level? 2NS is here to help. 2NS strives to help you attain the highest degree of health and performance. Combining cutting-edge science and the best from nature, 2NS gives fitness enthusiasts and athletes the fuel they need. Check them out at secondnaturesupplements.com. That's 2ndnaturesupplements.com. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. Yeah, and it's that common, common struggle. It's the common, really, like you said, understanding.
I agree 100%. And the thing I think of the most when you say all those things is like, have when you were a kid or when you were younger, did you ever like play a game or do something to where like you earned the pizza party and like that pizza party was awesome and it was way better in your mind than it actually was? I think the mentality of earning something or earning food or earning the body that you want is like so like people try to chop things up into like, oh, it was this, or oh, it's this quick fix, or oh, it's this quick that this or that. But 9 times out of 10 it's not. It's a lot of hard work. And the amount of self-fulfillment and pride you get out of doing the hard work and the amount of like mental satisfaction you get out of that is like not talked about enough, and like I think one of those things where I really resonate with is like I read a lot of like Jocko Willink and David Goggins and all those guys, and it's like discipline is freedom. It really is. You have the freedom to choose and pick and do whatever it is that you want to do because you have the discipline to stick with it. And I think that's what bodybuilding really emulates is like that there's freedom in it through the disciplines.
Yeah, and when you're talking about, becoming a trainer and not having, really a direction, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you put your mind to it and you put the discipline to it, and it gave you the freedom to, live the life that you wanted to live. And there's just so many different examples of how putting yourself through a struggle will just, open up so many more opportunities, open up so many more doors. And being uncomfortable, I think, is another thing that we're not really good at anymore, making yourself uncomfortable.
I have seen that so many times. And it's like, how many times do you see somebody go through something hard and they come out on the other side of it super, super grateful? Or they come out of it like in a different way. I think everything hard in my life was put in there for a distinct purpose. Um, Especially like I had things like injuries, like I had a pec reconstruction in 2015, and then I was homeless, and then I had the suicide of my girlfriend, and then I moved to Texas, and like everything hard I ever had to go through, right, taught me how to be a better person. And so, not by any means am I perfect, or not by any means am I better than the next guy, but it gave me better perspective and it gave me more gratitude for the life that I lead now. And so it gives me more fulfillment every single day because, man, I was in some horrible situations before. And I think like there's a lot of peace and there's a lot of happiness in that. And I think where people forget is like it's a more society, more things, more things, more things, but unless you are fulfilled, those things won't bring you happiness. And so you have to do the hard things so that you know what hard actually is, so that you can be grateful for what you actually have. Because
Yeah.
there's so many things that we have that we take for granted, or there's so many situations that we have that we take for granted, that if we don't put ourselves in a hard situation, then we don't know what a bad day is. If all we have is sunshine, then you never know what a rainy day is.
Right.
And I think that's like the biggest takeaway from everything that we do is like if we do the hard things, then the easy days are even better, but even the hard things are just a little smaller. It makes a problem that's maybe yay big.
Absolutely. And I think it's weird how like fitness in general, bodybuilding or whatever avenue you're going to talk about, just working out even is one of those small examples of like putting yourself through a small, like I said, small example, putting yourself through a hard time, doing a hard workout at the gym makes your makes you physically uncomfortable. Your breathing gets harder, you're sweating, your muscles are hurting. And then after, your muscles are hurting. And it's like, how does that change you mentally? And it's just so crazy that it does. And it's so crazy that people are, loving putting themselves through that. And, just the results that we get physically and mentally from just simply doing a workout on a normal basis.
I think I think the best example of that I had yesterday, right? So yesterday I was running on little to no sleep, and I told myself I was like, well, today I have to still win the day because I still have a regimen to follow. I still have to get this workout, these things, and these priorities done, not be a jerk, still take care of my family and my friends, and do so with a smile on my face. And I got through the end of the day. I did everything I was supposed to do. Maybe my workout wasn't amazing. Maybe it wasn't like stellar, but I got it done and I'm definitely feeling it today. But I literally would look at each machine and I was like, I just have to get through 2 working sets. I just have to push them as far as I can and then that's it. And then just move on. And I did everything as precise and as efficient as I possibly could have. And if you asked me for $1,200 if I could have given more effort, I could not have. Like in all seriousness. And I got through the end of the day, and everything with my relationships were good. Everything with my business was good. I made it through. Maybe with not the same piss and vinegar as I would have, but I still did. And I went to my fiance and I was like, I'm incredibly proud of myself for today because I got through everything I was supposed to get through and then some while running on no sleep. And I get to rest now because I did the hard thing. And if this is the hardest day of my prep, then everything else is easy from here. When you've gone through some hard stuff, like the nice days are even nicer. And like if I have a day with no hiccups, I'm like, man, this is nice. This is great. Like, yeah, I'm a pretty happy guy today. This is lovely. And it's just like when you're tired, when you go through a day and you're on little to no sleep, like the rest of the week, you're like, man, this is easy. Like I got some sleep, everything's good. Like, yeah, I'll schedule this, I'll do that. Like, no big deal. I'm all right. And it gives you that perspective, right? Because like how can you be happy unless you know what being unhappy feels like? So you got to have both ends. And I think, not only bodybuilding, but anything hard really takes a ton of diligence and it takes, the discipline to be like, today's going to be hard, but I still have to win. I still have to win the day. And how do I win the day? Well, I have this objective, this objective, this objective. And so long as I get those done, then I'm okay. And that's it. And just plugging away at each day.
We just don't appreciate how good we have it a lot of times. And, being here in America, we have it, as good, if not better than anyone else. And, you think we would have a lot of perspective just for that simple fact that we do know that other people around the world are not as lucky as we are to just simply be in a geographical location. We have so many advantages.
Oh yeah. I remember so I lived in China when I was I think 21. When I was 21, I spent the summer in China. I remember going to a Chinese hospital and I was on a date and she got a concussion when we were ice skating. And yeah, so it's a very funny story. So we went to the hospital and it was packed because you got to remember universal healthcare, packed to the brim. And there's a fruit stand right outside the front door. Like guy, no shirt, fruit stand right outside the front door of the hospital. And we turned and everyone stared at us. And then she goes, everyone is staring at us. And I go, it's because you're so pretty. And she's like, no, no, no. It's because you're white. Because it's the northern province. And so I was like, okay. But the foreigner gets served first, and everybody was in an uproar that we got to skip the line and go right in through. And I cannot unsee the atrocities that I saw going through those hallways. I cannot. And the amount of cleanliness and even like the amount of precision that we have in the American healthcare system, we take for granted. Cause like we kind of look at it like, oh, this could be better. And oh, this isn't this or da, da, but 9 times out of 10, when you go to the hospital, you're probably going to get some pretty good service and you're probably going to get taken care of. And you're probably not going to have some chronic health defects then thereafter. So I remember the amount of like being nervous just being there. And all we were getting was an MRI because of how unclean and how crazy everything seemed to be there. And then we got the MRI, we paid for it, we left. And I remember telling everybody about the hospital and how crazy it was. And four people got the next flight to JFK because here in America we really take a lot of things for granted. It's like, and we don't understand. Like, some people live in fucking mud huts, and some people can't. Like, some people live on $2 a day, and some people like have to do some ungodly things to just like put food on the table. And here, like, we have a problem with too much food, or we have a problem with too much access to things, or we have an easy time making money compared to other places, and that like skills that are you would never consider valuable are valuable here. And it's just one of those things where like, if we add a little bit of challenge to our day, or if we add a little bit of gratitude and discipline, it just makes it that much better.
Yeah. The world of bodybuilding, since you've kind of been in it for a while, like how do you see it changing or transitioning, from a couple years back to now to kind of moving forward? Do you see any like big sweeping changes or anything like that occurring?
So the big sweeping change is two things, right? Social media being the first one. Everybody now understands that they almost have to document or be on there to be relevant, right? They want to see their meals, they want to see their stuff and everything else because they can't just do a DVD and then be done with it, or they can't just do like a photo shoot and then be done with it and go into their off season. Like, everybody wants to see like, what is it you're doing, what is it that you're eating, what is it like, you got to be relevant, right? And so social media has become a job, and like that's the hard. And if you want to be successful in bodybuilding and you want to have a name and all this other stuff, like, social media is your job, 100%. Whether in if you're an amateur coming up or whatever it is, like, sure, you can look great and like you can do all that jazz and everything else like that, but I definitely believe that social media is like a huge part of it now. And there's more pressure to look good all the time than there was prior. That's a big one. I think the other one is like there's more awareness on what the ramifications of PED use does. There's more awareness on like, oh, that enlarges your heart. Oh, this actually has long-term ramifications on your brain. Oh, this might actually affect this, this, and that. And there's more of an awareness of like, how do we increase longevity? How do you do the least amount of damage in the shortest amount of time? How do we do things safer? Is there a safe way to do things? Is there really a way to do this that like can actually be somewhat healthy, but at the end of the day, like, we're making a physical choice that isn't necessarily very healthy, nor is it like conducive to living a long life. It's just like in the in the wild, like the biggest animals die first. It just is the way it is. So there's certain things you have to accept, and there's a lot of things that people are now nervous about that they weren't nervous about before because they're seeing a lot of new tragedies that we haven't seen prior. So I think people are more aware of what things do now than what they did prior. And I think there's more of a push to, but in the inverse too, things are more competitive, things are more extreme, things are, you always have to look good for Instagram, you always have to be relevant, you always have to be training harder, you're everybody can see everything you're doing. So there's more of a push to always be on top of things. And I think there's a level of stress and anxiety for the guys higher up or like professionals and things like that in that, because now you can't just like hide away like Dorian Yates for a year and come out once a year. Now everybody sees everything everybody's doing, and keeping your blinders on and staying in your own lane is harder now than it ever was. So I think the way it's changing in a health way is a little better. I think it's going to progress. I think the media coverage is more, which is great for the fan, which is great for the consumer. But I think it's more stressful and more anxiety ridden for the athlete now more than ever.
Yeah. It is interesting to kind of see the, as it becomes more popular, it's both of those things you said are kind of like go hand in hand as far as, the more popularity it gets, the more attention it gets. And, if people are dying young in this sport, having more publicity on that is certainly not good for the sport. So I think the sport has to find a way to, um, make it sustainable. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if there's some sort of like, forced period of time where you have to do something. You have to have some type of period of time where the athletes are doing more restorative. I can't say the other word, restorative. Um, some type of restorative period. Call it an off season, but like you said, now off seasons are even more stressful than ever. Like some sort of period to where it's more of a restorative period, and getting the hormones right, getting making sure the organs are on a good path, make sure the heart and the brain are right. Like I think there's got to be some sort of management. You see it within bigger sports, to some degree at least. Even the sports that are more physical and physically demanding, like football. There's some type of protocol when it comes to an athlete getting injured or an athlete having a concussion. I think there needs to be some sort of protocol potentially if that's the direction that they want to take it in a more health. I don't think it's ever going to be a optimize health kind of situation because it is a sport, but in a more
Yeah, no.
health direction than at least in the past it has been. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
Yeah, and it comes back to what Stan Efferding said. If you want to compete, don't expect to be healthy. But at the same time, too, like it's always like mitigating what risks that we can take, so that way, we're not taking unnecessary risks, right? So that's really like the question of what risks are necessary and what risks aren't necessary, you know. And it definitely is a question of that. And I think the more in the past like 2 3 years, there's more information now about it than ever. And I think it really has to do with a lot of the current events. And I think you're going to see a huge swing in what people are doing in the next 4 to 5 years,
Yeah.
And so, and you even see natural bodybuilding starting to pick up. You really like, especially in the United Kingdom. I talked to Vicky McCann. I worked with her for a little while. Like, there's some natural champions out there who look incredible, who would floor some NPC competitors, who could go pro, who have gone pro uh in the IFBB as classic physique champions. And like that really is a testament to, giving a lot of people hope to, like, if I just train hard and I eat consistent and I do all the right things, I can get there. And it's like, yeah, absolutely you can, but it's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of discipline, and there's no shortcuts. I think that's going to gain a lot of traction, and I think the more aware people get, the better.
Do you think that there is a bodybuilding without, some type of PED usage?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think that's
There's
a
some
reality?
incredible athletes out of Europe, out of the UK especially, that don't do anything. And I think the US is slow to get to it. There are some incredible athletes here, don't make no mistake, but I think it's gonna come around, because I think the risk of all of the implications that PEDs come with is really coming to the forefront of everybody's mind, especially the younger guys' minds, and I think it's going to make a huge upswing in the next 2 to 3 years, where people are like, what are they doing? How come this guy doesn't have to do anything and he looks amazing? And like David Kay and Bob Waterhouse and Vicky McCann and like, AJ Morris and like all these guys who are incredible natural athletes, but yeah, they're not on PEDs. They're never going to look like the people on PEDs. There's always going to be a demand for that look, right? But then there's going to be a new generation of people that are going to see those athletes and be like, well, I can still look really good and not jeopardize my health.
Yeah. I think it's possible. Do you think that eventually that it will flip kind of to where it is now, like where the natural side is the more popular prevalent side and the untested is the kind of where the tested is now?
No, because I think like got to the discipline question. It's going to be easier to look incredible with PEDs at the end of the day, right? Like the problem with PEDs is that they work. They work really well. And like that's why I think it'll never go to where natural is more popular than the unnatural, but I do think the natural will get more popular. You look at those UK athletes, they are more hardcore than some of the many of the American athletes that I know. And like they are just bar none, a ton of hard work, a ton of discipline, and all consistency. And the conditioning shows it. Um and I'll tell you what, like I think I think that in itself is beautiful. You know, I watch them for my own motivation.
Yeah. So as far as your future in the sport goes, what do you think it is for you to kind of make that turn and take that pro step?
Time, right? It's time and consistency and diligence, right? So you have to continue working hard and you have to continue learning. You have to continue adapting, right? So it's always one of those things where like as we go on, it's not taking unnecessary risks, right? Whether it's training or with anything else, so we can prolong our longevity. Like I stopped deadlifting super heavy. I was deadlifting heavy this year and I felt a nice little pop in my left hamstring. And then I remember my fiance being like, you know, Phil Heath never deadlifted off the floor. And it's like one of those things where like I question the validity of certain exercises now that are more risk to reward to increase my longevity. And you always learn and you get better as far as dieting and training and uh and just overall progression as you go. So as long as you're keeping an open mind and you continue to learn more about yourself as you continue through the sport, then of course you're going to get better. And it's just staying diligent. It's just staying on the horse, right? I think that is the only thing. And if it's not this year or next year, then you just keep continuing and you keep pressing on. But keep in mind that you're doing this because you enjoy it and you love it, but not for any other reason.
I think a lot of people could definitely benefit from that piece of wisdom.
I think it's like, and the reason why I have that wisdom is from like the things I've been through, right? If I had never gone through all the hard things I had gone through, then I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I probably wouldn't be ready for the relationship or the things that I have today. And I think about it all the time. And I tell my fiance, is like, if you had met me when I was younger, you probably wouldn't have liked me at all. And then, yeah, let's say if I met my fiance like when I was like 25 or 22, like it wouldn't have worked. But now I'm grateful for her. Now we have a healthy relationship because I have that perspective, right? And so that's what it's all about is like, maybe you get things when you're ready, and if you don't get it this year, then you're not ready, but that's okay because the gym's not going anywhere. Like nothing's going anywhere. You're still a healthy individual. You can just do it again and you'll just get better and you'll just get better and you'll just get better. And I think like that's the thing that gives me like a lot of hope and perspective is I'm like, I'm in no rush. I'm enjoying this. I'm having a lot of fun with this. And I do this because it's I get to, not because I have to. And so, every year my training improves and every year my diet gets, or the dieting process becomes a little more insightful, where it's not as where I have more knowledge behind it. And sharing that with other people and giving other people that wisdom or that advice or making their lives better with that knowledge gives me more back than any pro card ever could.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100% agree. It's all the process, and just be where you are. Um, Other than that, man, it was really good getting to talk to you. I appreciate
Yeah,
you
man.
coming on
This
here.
is a lot of fun. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good to get to meet you, and then on such short notice, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, if ever you need anything from me, I'm more than happy to whatever it is. I know that you're all the way in Kentucky, but if you're ever in Austin, Texas, do you want some good food? Let me know. Really appreciate you having me on. Like, this is absolutely incredible. And yeah, it was an honor.